Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we have something truly terrifying in store for you. I've gathered some of the scariest stories from Reddit that will absolutely not let you sleep tonight. So make sure you're comfortable, maybe turn on a light, and let's dive into these spine-chilling tales. Trust me, you're going to want to stay until the end. Story number 1. My husband brought a Ouija board home. It changed our lives forever. My husband, Connor, and I have always been huge horror aficionados. Ever since I was a child, I've been a fan of the gruesome and the macabre. Almost anything goes. Almost. Connor knows that I only have one rule when it comes to Halloween. No clowns, and absolutely no Ouija boards. Not in the house, not in the yard, not in the forest behind our home. But apparently, even though I've been drilling it into him since we started dating, that was too difficult for him to understand. "Hey babe, I'm home," Connor said, tossing his keys into the bowl by the door. "Welcome back," I replied from my place on the couch. "So you'll never guess what I won as a prize at work today," he said as he rounded the corner. My heart dropped the second he came into view. "No." Get it out of my house," I snapped, pointing to the door. Connor's expression dropped, the Ouija board falling to his side. But I thought it'd be fun, just this once. I made direct eye contact with him, a raging fire in my eyes. "Connor, you know how I feel about Ouija boards. I had a traumatic experience when I was a kid. Now please do as I ask, and get it out of the house. I don't want that thing anywhere near me." Connor sighed. "Fine, you win. It's going back in my truck," he said. Disappearing from view, I picked up my wine glass and took a large swig. I loved that man, but he really knows how to push my buttons. We both had off work the next day. We were each hanging out with separate friend groups, so I didn't know what he was up to. I trusted him. Part of me wishes I hadn't. His poor decisions that night changed our lives forever. When Connor got home, it was nearly 3 in the morning. The kids had spent the night at their grandparents' house, so it was just the two of us. I thought that maybe after Connor tumbled into bed, we might have a little time to be intimate. I was dead wrong. I was already lying down by the time Connor walked through the door. I had been snuggled under the covers, with the lights off, doom scrolling on Instagram, and waiting to make sure that he made it home safely. I listened as the front door opened and shut. Then I heard the faint creak of the stairs. It sounded like he was trying to be quiet, which I appreciated. He was being considerate because I might be asleep. Now I know that wasn't the reason. The footsteps stopped just outside the room. I heard shuffling, as if someone was pacing back and forth. I kept expecting the door to open and for my husband to be standing there, a big goofy grin plastered across his face. But that didn't happen. I wanted to yell out to him or turn on the bedside lamp, but it felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I took my eyes off the door for even a second, something bad was going to happen. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, illuminated by nothing by my phone screen. Then, just as I thought my heart might explode from anticipation, it happened. The doorknob started to turn, the door creaked open, and I could make out the silhouette of my husband standing in the entryway. He didn't say a word to me. He bolted over to the bed, kicked off his shoes, and threw himself beneath the covers, facing the wall. I was stunned. It had all happened so fast. "Honey, is everything okay?" He didn't answer. He just nodded his head. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. This behaviour wasn't like the Connor that I knew. I stared at him, waiting for him to say something, to give me some sort of explanation. But he didn't move. He just stayed there, still as a statue. I didn't take my eyes off him until I heard him start to snore. Eventually, I lulled myself into a false sense of security. I had to in order to get to sleep. I told myself that Connor was just wasted. His friends did drink quite a bit when they hung out. That thought helped put my mind at ease. Until the next morning, I awoke to find his side of the bed empty. The smell of bacon wafting upstairs from the kitchen immediately caught my attention. My assumption about him must have been correct. Connor was hungover and needed some greasy food to get himself back to normal. I took my time getting ready before meeting him in the kitchen. He had his back to me when I took a seat at the table, a plate full of bacon sitting beside him on the counter. Morning, he said, flipping a pancake. Morning. You want to tell me what all that was about last night? I replied, eyeing him. He turned to face me, his brows furrowed. What do you mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? You came up to our room last night acting really weird. You didn't say a word to me, then you went to sleep with your clothes on. Huh, I don't remember that. Must have been more drunk than I thought. There it was. I had no reason to worry. Thought so. How'd the boys' night go? I asked, standing to brew myself a cup of coffee. Decent. We got wasted and played with that Ouija board I won. Don't worry, I left it at Mike's house. My stomach dropped. Oh, really? And did you contact anything? I dreaded his answer. My throat had gone dry and I suddenly found myself clinging to every word. I thought we did at one point, but I'm pretty sure it was just Aaron moving the planchette. He tried to pretend like it was this entity called Mr. Pip. So stupid, right? A cold sweat enveloped my entire body at the mention of that name. I had to sit down to stop myself from passing out. No, I muttered, head in my hands. This can't be happening. Not again. Or Connor seemed okay after that. For the next week, I searched for any indication that he wasn't right. Something to clue me in that this thing had returned. I watched him like a hawk. The only thing out of the ordinary was that Connor stayed in the bathroom for a suspiciously long time one day after work. But it turned out that it was just constipation from the Taco Bell he'd eaten at lunch. Nothing paranormal about that. After a whole week passed, I let myself believe that Friday night was just a fluke. I should have been more careful. I came home that Monday after a grueling shift, ready to turn on a rom-com and pour myself a glass of Cabaret. I'm home, I shouted, kicking off my shoes. I received no response. That was odd. The kids should have been there, and Connor's car was in the driveway. I rounded the corner to the kitchen, brows knitted in confusion. My heart dropped when I found Alice and Tommy sitting at the table, their faces pale as sheets. Mum, Tommy whispered. His voice was low, as if he was afraid to speak too loudly. What is it, sweetie? What's wrong? I said, rushing over to him. It's Daddy, Alice interjected. She was choking back tears. He's being really scary. He told us to stay here and wait for him to get done. I was suddenly blanketed in a cold wave of dread. I didn't like where this was going. He didn't hurt you, did he? I asked, studying their expressions. They both shook their heads. No. I breathed a sigh of relief. All right, I'll go see what's wrong. Don't worry, okay? I won't let anything happen to you. They shared a glance before giving me a grim nod. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I proceeded toward my room. Just to be safe, I grabbed the baseball bat lying by the door that Tommy had forgotten to put away. My heart pounded in my chest with each step I climbed. I didn't know what I was going to find when I opened that door, but it certainly was not the scene that I walked into. I eventually reached the top landing and stood outside my bedroom. I pressed my ear to the door and listened, but I couldn't hear anything. Come on, Hannah, just get it over with. It'll all be over soon. I mustered up every ounce of courage I had, and I burst into the room. I was shocked at what I saw. My husband stood in front of the vanity mirror. He was applying a fresh layer of makeup. Clown makeup. His face was stark white, with black streaks running down from his eyes like he'd been crying motor oil. He wore a polka-dotted jumpsuit with a red, scraggly wig and big floppy shoes. This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of nightmare. The second I entered, I froze, and he turned toward me. Connor, what is this? What are you doing? The clown began to giggle. It's been such a long time, Annie. It's good to see you again. He was using Connor's vocal cords, but that voice was not the one I knew. It was higher pitched yet soft, like an entertainer speaking to a child. All the colour drained from my face. I raised the baseball bat, prepared to swing. That's not my name. You give me my husband back, you sick freak. The thing wearing my Connor's skin frowned, its big red lips drooping animatedly. Annie, is that really the way to treat your long-lost pal? Mr. Pip missed you. I couldn't take it anymore. I swung as hard as I could, tears blurring my vision. I missed, lurching forward as the bat crashed into the bed frame. I instantly knew that I'd messed up, because a second later I felt the cool, sharp glint of a blade against my throat. Listen here. You will do what Mr. Pip asks, or he will drive the tip of this knife into your skull while your children watch. Do you really want that, Annie? My breath hitched in my throat. No. Good girl, he said, shoving me away. Downstairs now. I immediately thought to call the cops, but he was right behind me. I couldn't get to my phone without him seeing. Instead, I was forced to march down the stairs and over to the table where my children sat, petrified. The clown led me to a chair beside Tommy, while he claimed one beside Alice. My heart shattered for my baby girl. I couldn't imagine how scared she must have been. Hello again, kids. Mr. Pip is happy to see you. He didn't receive a response. I said, he growled, pounding his fist onto the table. Mr. Pip is happy to see you. He scowled at my children, who each wore a horrified expression. I'm happy to see you too, Mr. Pip, Tommy murmured, avoiding eye contact. Good, was that so hard? His large, exaggerated smile returned, as if it had never left. Tommy shook his head. Now, Annie, if you'll be so kind, will you get Mr. Pip a glass of water? He's parched. I nodded. Before I stood, I slipped Tommy my phone under the table, praying he'd know what to do. Tommy was a smart kid. He was our only shot. Did you children know that your mommy and Mr. Pip were on television together? Annie was the star of the show. Though I wanted to scream with every fibre of my being, I didn't utter a peep. I simply poured a glass of water and walked back to the table. This thing. It was using my husband as a vessel to get to me. I just had to play into its little game, and everything would turn out okay. Right? Mr. Pip, Tommy said, his voice shaky. Yes, Tommy, he replied, turning his attention to my son. Can I go to the bathroom? Our captor thought it over, eyes travelling to the ceiling, knife tapping absent-mindedly against his chin. Mr. Pip supposes that would be all right, but hurry back. You wouldn't want to miss out on the fun. Tommy nodded, then trotted away, acting like he really had to pee. I couldn't have been more proud in that moment. But then I was reminded of the task at hand. I returned to the table and handed the glass of water to the clown, who had my daughter at knife point. I watched as he took a sip. Then my heart dropped. His face immediately twisted, and a deep frown overtook his countenance. He shot up from his chair, locking eyes with me. This is warm. Without breaking eye contact, he smashed the glass on the floor. Try again. I trembled as I did what he asked. I waited for the water to get cold, then I threw in a couple of ice cubes from the freezer for good measure. My hand shook as I handed over the new glass. The clown greedily snatched it up. He downed the entire thing, ice cubes and all, before looking me directly in the eyes. Much better, he grinned. Something in that smile felt deeply sinister. It only grew wider as he smashed the second glass on the ground. Take off your shoes. Well, what? Take off your shoes, he repeated in a sickly sweet sing-song voice. But I did as I was asked. I don't take them off. You're making Mr. Pip very angry, Annie. You wouldn't want that now, would you? He asked, his eyes falling to Alice. I shook my head. No. I stripped off my shoes and tossed them aside. Socks, too. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears as I obeyed his commands. Now walk, he said, pointing to the room over, that twisted grin so wide that his face paint was cracking. Please don't make me do this, I said, tears welling in my eyes. Don't make Mr. Pip repeat himself. Walk. I glanced at him through the tears blurring my vision. He was standing behind Alice's chair now, knife on full display. I had to do this. I couldn't let him hurt my daughter. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes and plunged my bare foot forward into the hundreds of glass shards littering the floor. My eyes shot back open as the pain seared through my foot like lightning. I yelped, instinctively pulling it back. Keep going, the clown demanded. The eager glimmer in his eyes made me want to vomit. He was reveling in this. I gritted my teeth and leaned on the table for support. I motioned to place my hurt foot back down, but I didn't get the chance. Not that one. Now it's time to put your best foot forward, he cackled, his boisterous laughter reverberating off the walls. No one else so much as twitched. I turned back to find the knife pressed to Alice's side. Her eyes were wide and her bottom lip was trembling. I didn't have a choice. I applied pressure to my injured foot, a debilitating pain roaring through every synapse. I leaned even harder on the table, grateful at least for that tiny blessing. I hovered my right foot over the broken glass for a moment, before I took the next step. I released an audible shriek as my right foot was sliced to ribbons. A pool of blood had blossomed around me, mingling with the spilled water and glass fragments. Everything hurt. I nearly collapsed, but somehow I remained standing. I glared back at the sadistic clown holding a knife to my daughter's neck. "Very good, Annie." Phew, I hated that voice. I hated him. But that phrase, as much as I loathed it, gave me a little sense of comfort. Maybe he was satisfied. Maybe that was it. Now do it again. A cold dread swallowed me like a python. This couldn't be happening. What? You heard me. Mr. Pip said do it. Again. Stars swam in my vision as I glanced back at the mess on the floor. I was losing a lot of blood. I didn't know how much more I could take. I turned, wincing as the glass shards shifted beneath my flesh, and I prepared to follow his command. The pain was so immobilizing that I felt like I was going to pass out. I lifted my left foot, droplets of blood falling to the ground. I squeezed my eyes shut and, "Police, drop your weapon." That sound was music to my ears, too. I looked at the thing in my husband's body. His smile had melted into a deep frown. "But we were having so much fun. Oh well, goodbye, Annie, for now." I watched as the menacing glint left his eyes. His demeanour changed in an instant. The clown blinked a couple of times, then his eyes fell to the knife. He seemed shocked to be holding it. He let it slip to the floor as the officers moved in. "Hannah, what's going on? Why is there so much blood on the floor? Why am I wearing this?" A new kind of horror struck me in that moment. My Connor was back, the sweet, loving husband and father that I knew. And he was being led away in cuffs. It's been 2 months since Connor's arrest, and I'm still having trouble processing what happened. It took a long time to heal from my injuries. I needed stitches, and I had to stay off of my feet for weeks. The kids haven't had any interest in visiting their father while he's been detained. I don't blame them either. His decision to use that Ouija board opened a wound that we can never close. The trauma inflicted that day will last a lifetime. Even so, I know that my husband isn't the bad guy. He's a victim too. God, I wish I could just make all of this go away. I want to go back to being a big happy family again. But I know that we can't do that. And I have a feeling that as bad as things are now, they're just going to get worse. Because I can't shake the last thing that clown told me from my head. Goodbye, Annie, for now. Story number 2. I cheated a suicide demon out of a life. Now it's coming for me. I climb skyscrapers. I'm a window washer. I do office buildings, high-rises, places like that. And I've seen things through those windows you wouldn't believe. Nudity, fistfights, drug use, you name it. It's all part of the job. I've learned when you catch someone who thinks no one's watching, that's when you see them for who they really are. Still, having said that, nothing trumps what I saw yesterday. Nothing. This is what happened. Me and a trainee were 70 stories high, washing the window of this little girl's bedroom. This was a luxury high-rise, very high dollar. Inside, I couldn't help but notice this man hugging his daughter. She might have been 5 or 6. Neither of them saw us. Once he let her go, he put up a hand, like he was telling her not to follow. He turned, walked out the door, and shut it behind him. There was an adjacent window. Inside was the man's living room with the kitchen behind it. The man walked across the living room and over to a bookshelf. He gripped it and walked backwards with it until it blocked the girl's door. In her room, the girl eyed the door, holding her teddy bear by the arm. She'd heard all that noise. She was clearly confused. And so were we. The man marched back into his living room and jabbed a finger into an empty corner. He hissed at it, like he was really giving someone a piece of his mind, but nobody was there. Then he went into the kitchen, snatched a bar stool from the counter, brought it back into the living room, and placed it underneath the ceiling fan. Come on, what's with this guy? He went back to the kitchen, this time digging through a drawer. He pulled out a piece of paper and a brand new teddy bear with a tag clipped on its ear. He dropped the paper on the counter. Then he glanced over at his daughter's bedroom kissed the teddy bear, and set it on top of the paper. He reached back into that same drawer, deeper this time. When his hand came out, it held onto a long rope with a loop tied on each end. He walked into the living room, nice and slow, dragging himself along, like he didn't want to go through with whatever he was doing. In the bedroom, the girl pushed the door. It smacked against the bookshelf. She pushed harder, and once it smacked again, she realized she was trapped. She slapped on the door, screamed so loudly we heard her through an inch of glass. The man balanced himself on the stool. When he heard his girl, his face tightened like his heart was being squeezed by the sound of her voice. He glared back into that same corner, shouted something I couldn't make out. Then he fastened the rope tight around the ceiling fan. He fastened the other end around his neck. My trainee, who I just called Kid, was yelling, pounding on the glass, shaking our basket around. I gripped onto the railing. Our basket was no bigger than an elevator. It hung by 2-point suspension, connecting to a crane on top of the building. We dangled over an 800-foot drop. With all that banging around, the man snapped his head up, wide-eyed. "Come on, man," the kid was yelling. "Don't do it!" The man shook his head. He scooted forward, nudging his toes off the edge of the stool, 1 inch at a time. If I didn't do something, he'd kill himself. I had to get his attention back. I grabbed my squeegee, flipped it on its metal handle, and hammered the glass. The loud crack jolted his eyes back up. Skyscraper glass is too thick to shatter, but at least I had him back. I pointed to his daughter's bedroom. Without making a sound, I mouthed the words, "What about her?" The man froze. He glanced toward the bedroom, pressed his lips together, then looked back at me with tears in his eyes. For a second, I thought he felt ashamed, but then he looked at the empty corner again and shouted that he was sorry. My blood ran cold. "Frank," the kid whispered, "are you seeing this?" I saw. The man had reached his breaking point. Whatever he was seeing had him convinced. He faced forward, shut his eyes. The legs of the stool wobbled. He was fighting against his reflexes, trying to force his legs to kick over the stool. One small step from snapping his neck, but then he stepped back. He reached up, lifted the rope from his neck, and stepped down. The girl screamed again for her father. He slouched onto the stool and leaned on his elbows. He studied his hands, which were visibly shaking. Then he sank his face into them. "Get us back up," I told the kid. "I'm calling the cops." While the kid controlled the basket, I dialed 911. 3/4 of the way up, right when the operator connected, the kid stopped the basket. We swayed from the impact and slapped a window. I stared at the kid. "Operator, please state your emergency." "Kid," I said, "come on. There's a little girl stuck in there with a lunatic. Get moving." A rush of wind blew by and whistled on the side of the building. The basket rocked and swayed. The kid was looking down over the edge. Slowly, he raised his eyes to meet mine, blinked a few times, then shook his head, giving off a little smile. "Sorry, Frank." He resumed the lift. At the top, the cops were already waiting for us. I gave an approximate location of the apartment, and a group of them raced inside. A younger cop stayed behind and asked for my statement. I blocked the wind with my hand, lit a cigarette, and told him everything. The rope, the girl, all of it. The cop then asked the kid, "Did you witness the same sequence of events, sir?" "Not exactly," the kid said. "Huh? What possibly could I have left out?" I saw it all in my head, like a picture. The cop flipped his notepad to the next page. "All right, what would you like to add?" "There was also a woman," he said. "She might have been in her 70s or 80s. While he tried to hang himself, she stood in the corner, smiling." "What the hell's the matter with you?" I asked. "That apartment had 2 people, the man and his daughter. You know that. I'm only telling you what I saw." The cop studied us, his eyes snapping between me and the kid. Obviously, one of us was lying. When he opened his mouth to speak, someone spoke on his walkie-talkie instead. A string of police codes, then a demand for an immediate response. The cop hesitated. He didn't want to go, but he pocketed his pen and pad and said, "We'll be in touch." The door slammed shut, bouncing a metallic clang off nearby buildings. Then we were alone again. "Well," the kid said, "there's no sense in waiting around. Ready to get back to it?" He pointed at the basket, sitting at the edge of the rooftop. He was too casual, like he didn't just witness a near suicide and lie his ass off to a cop. I think you should go home, kid. But we're not finished. Why would I do that? I dropped my cigarette on the ground and smooshed it out. Because you're not well. Go on, I'll finish up. This is my job too, Frank. Don't worry, you can still log your hours. I won't tell no one. Now, Frank, he said, if I left early my first week, how would that make me look? I don't care how you look. I don't like you. I don't trust you. I am not getting back in that basket with you. Well, do you plan on cleaning any more windows today? If so, I'm afraid you'll have to. I got in the kid's face. You want me to tell Howard how you just tinkered with the truth? If not, turn around and walk out that door. Sure, go ahead. Actually, here, I can call him up for you. The kid dug into his pocket. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Because you see the problem, right? Howard can't fire me for something he wasn't here to see. However, he flipped his phone around. It was a picture of me nipping a flask on my lunch break. My stomach dropped. This is what they call concrete evidence. Then he flipped to Howard's contact and hovered his thumb over the call button. Do you want me to call? Say the word, Frank, and I'll call. I could have hit him right there. Go, just go, get in the basket. Whoa, 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 the kid said. Hold your horses. He slipped his phone back in his pocket and strolled over to the AC unit where his backpack was leaning. He dug around. His body blocked whatever he was doing, so I couldn't see what he was grabbing. I came up behind him, but the kid must have heard me. He stood up real fast. He was holding a sandwich, like this was a good time for a lunch break. Like he wasn't doing anything wrong. Something sparked in me. I palmed that sandwich, wound back, and pitched it off the edge of the skyscraper. It turned into a little white speck against the clear blue sky. Then I looked the kid dead in the eye, waiting for him to try something, see what happened. The kid's gaze followed it down, hundreds of feet. He whistled. Boy, it sure is a long way down, isn't it, Frank? He brushed past me, opened the gate of the basket, and stepped inside. I followed, ready for this day to be over. Window washers wear vests with a ring on the back. A harness hooks onto that ring and attaches to the roof. God forbid something should happen to the basket. It's a last line of defence. While I hooked in, the kid just stood there. What? I said. Need me to hold your hand? The kid laughed. He grabbed his harness and took his sweet time hooking in. Then he glanced at the control panel. Do you want me to take us back down? You're good right where you are. All right then, Frank, down we go. I powered on the crane and lifted us several feet above the roof. Then I eased the control stick forward, nudging the basket off the edge, putting hundreds of feet of open air beneath us. The wind picked up again, rocking the basket back and forth. The kid stuck his hands inside his pockets. We descended in total silence, listening to cables groan. Rush hour traffic raced below. The sun, low in the sky, splashed bright orange across the windows. When we reached the apartment, I glanced inside. It was empty. No father, no little girl. But the chair still sat under the fan, and the rope still hung above it. I couldn't take it no more. I needed answers. All right, you got to tell me. Why'd you make that stuff up? I didn't make anything up, but there is something I left out. He slipped a pair of box cutters from his pocket. He squeezed the button, and the blade flicked out. All right, kid, just take it easy. He grinned, flashing me a set of crooked teeth. You see her now, don't you? See who? Look inside. I did not want to take my eyes off those box cutters, so I only took a quick peek. What? It's an empty apartment? The kid shook his head. That is incredible. She is staring right at you, right on the other side of the window. You don't hear her screaming? I placed my hand on the controls. Look, I think we should head back. We're not going back, he said. The blade glinted in the sunlight. Listen to me. I am not a threat to you. Let's just talk about whatever this is. Sure, Frank, we'll talk. But first, there's something I need to ask you. Ask anything. Would you reach up behind you and unhook your harness? The kid had lost his mind. His eyes had this stone-cold look. He was dead serious. That's a safety violation, I said. I know, I've paid attention during training, but this is a debt that we both have to pay. My God, the kid wanted both of us to jump. Whatever delusions the man in the apartment had, the kid now had them too. And like the man, I happen to know that the kid also had a family, a wife and a little girl of his own. I dropped my voice. Answer me this. When your little girl is waiting for you at the door tonight, and you don't come home, how do you think she's going to feel? Probably about the same as your wife, he said, shifting the blade from my stomach to my neck. Last chance, Frank. Are you going to jump? I took a glance down. Down 70 stories. Down 800 feet. Down to rush hour traffic so far away it looked like a line of ants. Please, I said, don't do this. The kid exhaled, shut his eyes and reopened them. He removed the blade from my neck and pushed past me. He moved to the end of the basket and gripped a cable and started cutting. I took one step toward him, then heard a loud pop. A spray of liquid hissed from where he'd cut. I couldn't believe it. He'd severed the hydraulic line. Then I felt a bang. The basket dipped at a sharp angle. I slid down, striking against the gate and the kid. We both scrambled, fighting to plant our feet on the gate and get upright. I had a railing on my left. He had a railing on his right. We stood up, shoulder to shoulder, in the narrow width of the basket, each gripping the railing on our own side. I looked over at the kid. His eyes were already on me. Without breaking eye contact, he reached down and opened the gate under our feet. My cable caught my weight and my feet dangling into nothing. I hugged the railing tighter. I glanced down and saw an open ocean of air. Please, I begged, just stop. The kid was hooking his feet onto the railing, trying to achieve some type of stability. Then his hands left the railing, reached above me, and snipped my line. The weight of my entire body dropped into the grip of my hands. Now I dangled freely, with no harness. Hydraulic fluid rained down, slicking the railing. My fingers were losing their grip. I hugged the railing tighter. Come on, Frank, the kid said. Let go already. I could no longer speak. I just nodded my head. I felt the kid's hand grip my shoulder, then push down. I slid down a couple inches, the railing screeching under my fingers. A cool rush of wind brushed against my legs. Here's the issue, Frank. If you don't choose to fall, it's not suicide, it's murder. And she doesn't want murder, so you have to make the choice. Then I felt his blade edging into the crevice between my head and right ear. But I can make your choice real easy. Do you want that? Is that what you want, Frank? I had never been so close to death. Every muscle inside my body tightened with fear. Then, out of nowhere, my mind pitched an idea. The kid was covered in hydraulic fluid. Hydraulic fluid is flammable. There was a lighter in my pocket. If I could make him cut his own line, I could torch him off the basket. But if he saw me going for the light, I was finished. I kicked my feet up, working to plant them on the inner lip of the basket. That exertion added strain to my hands and wrists. They began to tremble. Help me, I said. I'll do it, but first help me. His hand gripped the back of my shirt and lifted. My foot found the lip, giving immediate relief to my hands. His knife slid into my ear a little deeper. Do you need a count of 3? Just wait, I said, trying to catch my breath. I have a condition. What condition? That we both go at the same time. A trickle of blood ran down my neck. Come on, Frank, don't try to trick me. No tricks, I said. If you don't come with me, I choose no. You cut all you want. But unless we both jump, I choose no. The kid went quiet. Several seconds passed. Then the blade lifted from my ear. I peeked over. The kid hugged the railing, fixing to cut his own line. His eyes were still on me. I held the railing tight with my right hand. With the left hidden behind my body, I brought it down, praying he wouldn't notice. Wait, he said. Why are you looking at me like that? He snipped his line. Because, kid, this face is the last one you're ever going to see. I closed my fingers on the lighter. That goes for both of us, he said. I'm going to jump onto you now, Frank. Then we're both going to fall. Are you ready for that? Huh? The kid turned his body fully toward me, ready to jump. Then his eyes caught my hand. I punched it under his chin and clicked on the flame. His skull erupted into a burst of fire. He stuck out his hands to latch onto me, but I stuck out my leg and pumped him one in the stomach. He crumpled up and slipped off the basket, plunging into thin air. I hung there another 30 minutes before rescue came. While I waited, I must have started hallucinating, because I could have sworn I heard a woman screaming. Then the firefighters came. They cut a hole through the glass and pulled me in. From then on, disturbing things have been happening. While my wife drove me home, she asked for my permission to swerve into head-on traffic. That same night, I woke up to my 16-year-old son dousing me and my wife with gasoline. Then he asked for my permission to light a match. Now I'm sitting on the edge of a skyscraper, with my feet hanging off the edge. This entity is real. I know it is because it's inside the heads of my entire family. It's torturing me, tearing me down by using the people I love the most. It feeds on my pain and suffering, and it wants me to make a choice. After careful consideration, I think I've reached one. Story number 3. I found a stack of Polaroid pictures hidden in my son's Halloween candy. Someone's been stalking us. Neither of us knew what was waiting for us inside Max's candy bucket. We'd just brought it back home from trick-or-treating and unlocked the front door. The second I turned the knob, Max shot into the living room, holding his pumpkin-shaped candy bucket in both hands. He flipped it over, gave it a shake, and all his candy poured out onto the carpet. Then he tossed the bucket aside. "Mommy! Mommy!" he screamed. "Can I eat my candy now?" I came in behind him, laughing, because only a 5-year-old could get that pumped about eating candy. "Thank you for asking. Go ahead." I sat beside him, crisscross applesauce, and watched. Max worked through the pile by opening a piece, tasting it, then either scrunching up his face or giggling in approval before moving on to the next. It was adorable. Seeing him like that made me smile. But as I kept watching, the moment began to sour. See, I was a single mother. We lived off my income alone. And because I was just a waitress in a small cafe, money was tight. There were some days when I could only afford to feed Max and not myself. Whenever he asked why I wasn't eating, I'd say I already ate at the restaurant, which was a lie because even with my employee discount, those meals still cost money. My manager had even fired employees before for sneaking food without paying. I lied because I didn't want Max to worry. I think kids shouldn't have to worry about those kinds of things. They should be having fun, like Max was doing now. But while I watched him eat his candy, and I saw the happiness he got from what only strangers could give him, something twisted up inside me. I felt like a failure as a mother. Max noticed I wasn't eating any candy and piled several pieces in front of me. "No, honey," I said, putting them back on his pile. "These are all yours. Mommy doesn't want any." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to take any from you." Once I said that, a flicker of sadness moved in his eyes. He looked up at me, almost like he was beginning to understand something about me, like he'd had a realization, wise beyond his years. It broke my heart. "Okay," I said. "Just one. You choose." Max smiled. He hovered his little fingers over the pile, carefully weighing his options, and stalled over a Reese's peanut butter cup. He squeezed down and lifted. Underneath, the corner of something jabbed out. It looked like a small stack of paper. It looked glossy and even gleamed in the overhead light. Whatever it was, I could tell it wasn't candy. Did one of the neighbours put something in there by accident? I reached down and pulled at the corner, and out slid a stack of Polaroid pictures. There were 3 of them, stuck together with a rubber band. "What's this, Max?" Max didn't say anything. He watched curiously as I snapped off the rubber band and flipped the stack over. The first picture framed a residential home at night. An adult woman stood on the sidewalk with a hand on her hip, watching a much smaller person, most likely a child, approach the front door. The lighting was so dark I couldn't tell who they were, but in the child's hand I could see them gripping onto something, like a pail or a bucket. Right then I got it. This was a parent watching her child go trick-or-treating. Yep, one of the neighbours must have put this in here by mistake. I wondered who it was. I flipped to the next picture. I actually recognised the subject in this one. It was my neighbour Terry, standing at his opened front door. Someone who was hidden just beneath the frame held up a bucket, and Terry, smiling warmly like always, dropped a few pieces of candy in. Something about that bucket caught my eye. I studied it, noticing its circular shape, and realized it was designed to look like a pumpkin. My eyes drifted over to Max's pumpkin-shaped bucket on the carpet. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't want to jump to any conclusions. I flipped to the final picture. It was a shot of an open window taken from behind a bush. A few out-of-focus leaves dangled in the foreground. But in sharp focus, right in the center of the picture, was my son's smiling face. I was behind him, zipping up his costume. Just before we went trick-or-treating, we were standing inside this very room. "Max," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible, "which house gave you these?" Max scrunched up his forehead while he thought. He shrugged. Then he reached for another piece of candy. I blocked his hand. "Stop. Don't eat any more of that." I stood, glanced around. I was beginning to panic. "How come?" "Because I said so. Don't ask questions right now." Max began to cry. I ran to the front door to check the lock. It was already set. Okay, I'd just taken my son trick-or-treating. Someone was following us. They took pictures of us and then dropped those pictures inside his bucket. We only went around our neighborhood, so it had to be one of our neighbors who did it. Was this someone kind of sick joke? Or was one of them really stalking us? What do I do? I looked past the living room, into the kitchen. My phone was on the island counter. I raced over to it and dialed 911. It rang twice, then the operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, Max interrupted, tugging on my leg, crying for me to let him eat more candy. Honey, I will buy you more candy, but Mommy's on the phone, right? 911, the operator repeated. Please state your emergency. Yes, we need help, please. I think someone is stalking me. The operator took down my name, address, and details about what happened. 10 minutes later, 2 officers were at my house. One shone a flashlight around my property, while the other one, a young, tall officer, came to the door. He introduced himself as Officer Dan and asked for the photos. I'm Jenny, and this is all of them, I said, handing them over. He took them with a gloved hand and scanned over the first one. While I waited, I felt Max stir behind me. He was hiding behind my legs, peeking up at the officer. Officer Dan flipped to the second one, looked at it, then cleared his throat. Who's the man here? That's my neighbour, Terry, but it couldn't be him. He's a good man. I'm sure he is, he said. He flipped to the final picture. He studied it, and as he drank in the details, the faint lines around his eyes sharpened. He looked down at Max, then up to me. So, what's going to happen now? I said. My voice sounded more desperate than I had intended. We're going to sweep the neighbourhood. Even if we don't find anything, there'll be an officer nearby to patrol every hour. Also, we'll speak with Mr. Terry Knott, because he's a suspect, but just in case he's seen any suspicious activity. Also, I see that he has a ring camera. We'll check the footage on that as well. Now, Mum? He took a glance behind me. Is it just you two in the house? Yes, I said. Just us. Is there somewhere else you can stay tonight? Maybe with friends or family? There wasn't. All my friends were my husband's, and once he left me, so did they. I started to answer, but was caught by surprise when tears welled in my eyes. Whether it was the stress of our situation, or just me being scared, I didn't know. I blinked them away before they could fall and shook my head. No, it's just us, he nodded. Well, there's a DoubleTree down the road. Wouldn't be a bad idea for you guys to book a room tonight. Book a room? I don't even know how I'm going to feed Max tomorrow. Officer, that's not really an option for us. Officer Dan gave me this look then. Honestly, it wasn't so different from the one Max sometimes gave me. With Max, I always thought it was a normal sadness that kids feel when they don't get their way. But with the officer, there was something deeper. I think he actually felt sorry for me, and I never wanted that. I never wanted that from anybody. I felt embarrassed. Look, he said, pulling a pencil and notepad from his shirt pocket. This is my personal number. Doesn't matter what time, if you need anything at all, give me a call. I'll be close. Thank you, officer. Just Dan, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. Then he turned and left. I closed the door and rested my forehead on it. Mommy, Max said, What's happening? I shut my eyes. It's all right, sweetie. Mummy's just trying to fix a problem, that's all. We both got quiet. A few seconds passed. Will we be okay? I think so. Come on, let's go get ready for bed. Sleep in Mummy's room tonight. I'll come tuck you in. Okay, Max said. He ran up the stairs without a care in the world. I put Officer Dan's number on speed dial. Then I checked every door and every window to make sure the house was totally locked down. Half an hour later, I tucked Max into my bed, kissed him goodnight, and closed the door behind me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Officer Dan. He told me the neighbourhood was clear, but they'd keep a close watch. My heart sank. I had hoped they would have caught the bastard, and we could put this whole mess behind us. All the same, I thanked the officer and told him good night. Sleep was out of the question. Instead, I'd fix a cup of coffee and sit up all night. And if I heard so much as a twig snap outside, I was calling the cops. I headed downstairs to start on the coffee. My chest tightened with anxiety. He was still out there. I just knew it. Probably even close by. What if he was standing outside the house at that very moment? I caught myself biting on a fingernail and stopped. That was a bad habit I'd developed when I was a kid, but nowadays it only flared up during moments of high stress. I passed through the kitchen and opened the cabinet, fishing out both my Maxwell House coffee grounds and a filter. I loaded the filter, dumped in a few scoops, and hit brew. Then I stood there a moment, feeling myself wanting to cry again. Damn it, Jenny. Now is not the time to get emotional. You're the adult here. Hold it together. Something on the island countertop beside me shined in my periphery. I glanced over. Then I stared for a long time, in disbelief, trying to make absolutely certain that my eyes weren't deceiving me. Sitting right there, on the countertop, was a fresh set of Polaroid pictures. That was impossible. I'd given the officer everything I had. Was I losing my mind? I reached out, almost scared to touch them, and gently picked them up. In the first picture, Max was hiding behind my legs while I spoke with Officer Dan. Only this shot wasn't taken through an open window, from outside the house. It was taken from behind us, from inside the house. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. There was no way an intruder could have entered the house and taken a picture with an officer standing right there. I flipped to the next one. This one was of me in my bedroom, tucking my son into bed, and the way it was shot looked like something only possible in a dream. It was captured from a bird's eye view directly above our heads. A blade from the ceiling fan even cut into the edge of the frame. Because it was taken so close to the light, the shot was overexposed, which put a hazy kind of filter over it. This defied all logic. To get that picture, whoever or whatever took it would have to have been suspended from the ceiling. They would have to have manipulated themselves into an impossible angle, all without me or Max knowing. My hands were trembling now. The room was beginning to spin. Terrified now, I flipped to the final picture. It was of me, my back facing the camera, standing in my kitchen. I was looking down, studying something in my hands, just like I was now, at this very moment. The shot was taken so close behind me. Whatever had taken it could have reached out and touched me. I needed to get Max out of the house. Right now. Click. Something snapped directly behind my head. Then the room was quiet again. My mind took a moment to register what it even was, but slowly a sick realization slithered up from the pit of my stomach. What I had just heard was the shutter of a Polaroid camera. The camera's inner mechanisms hummed as it worked to print out the picture. I froze. I stopped breathing. In a desperate attempt, I tried reasoning with the intruder. "What do you want from me?" I cried. I listened for a response, still holding the pictures in my trembling fingers. There was no reply. The picture finished printing, and whatever was behind me stood perfectly still. Several seconds ticked by. Was it waiting for me to turn around? Across the counter, against the back wall, was a block of kitchen knives. I wished they were closer, but they were way out of reach. Depending on what happened next, maybe I could get to them. But for now, I would have to turn and face whatever was behind me, head on. One slow inch at a time, I turned my head, my heart pounding inside my chest. I expected to be stabbed or choked or grabbed at any second. I turned a little bit further, then shot a glance back. The kitchen was empty. I exhaled, but a new fear, much greater than before, exploded inside me. It's going to get Max. I dropped the pictures and shot around the counter and ripped out the biggest knife from the block. Then I dug out my phone and hit call on Officer Dan's contact. Call failed. I tapped the screen several more times. Call failed. Call failed. Call failed. I slammed it on the counter in a fit of anger. Of all the times for my phone to not work, of course it would be now. I had no other option. I'd have to run upstairs and get Max by myself. I moved through the downstairs with the knife aimed in front of me. I checked around every corner and every piece of furniture I passed. I sprinted up the stairs, then through the upstairs hallway, toward my bedroom. I pushed the bedroom door open slowly, horrified that it had already beaten me there. Thankfully, Max was still under the covers, safe and sound. I peeled the blanket off him and scooped him up in my arms. "Mommy?" he said, rubbing his eyes. "Shh, we have to go, stay quiet." He wrapped his arms around me and put his head on my shoulder. I crept over to the door and peeked into the hallway. Empty. I carried Max down the hall toward the stairs. If we could just make it out the front door, I'd run straight to the neighbours and call the cops from there. Just a short trip down the stairs and through the living room. We could do it. When we neared the steps, I heard the worst noise imaginable. Footsteps pounding up the stairs. My mind entered into fight or flight mode. Should I attack? Give Max a chance to run? No, I can't leave him. He'd never get away. I backed up. To my right was my son's bedroom. I ducked inside and rushed to the closet. I inched open the door as quietly as I could, but still, it squealed on its hinges. We slid inside. There was barely enough space for both of us. I clicked the door shut and stood in front of Max, using my body as a shield. "Mummy, what are we doing?" I turned and cupped a hand over his mouth. Not another word. We listened. With each passing second, the footsteps grew closer until they arrived at the bedroom door. Then they slowed to a nice and easy stroll and entered the room. Floorboards creaked under a shifting weight. Something paced across the room, from left to right, like it was searching for us. Once it reached the right wall, it stopped, then turned and moved toward the closet. I tightened my grip on the knife. A stream of adrenaline coursed through my veins, making my skin tingle. I fought hard to keep my mind clear and focused. If the door opened, I would take them by surprise, hammer the blade down in one quick motion. It was all I had. It came right up to the door and stopped. The sound of our own breathing filled the closet. A floorboard creaked. Every nerve inside my body screamed, "What is it doing? Why is it just standing there?" Then a camera clicked. Through the gap under the door, a light flashed. Against all logic, all reason, it had taken a picture of the closet door. A deep, yet childlike laughter vibrated into the closet. The camera clicked again. It knew exactly where we were, and it was playing games. It was toying with us. Max's body trembled behind me, and a soft whimper escaped from his lips. I prepared myself. The door would open any moment, and it was up to me to save our lives. I raised the knife so I could swing it down right as the door opened. I held my breath. I listened as the handle jiggled and began to turn. The door swung open. I hacked the knife blindly in front of me. Officer Dan staggered backwards just in time. "Whoa, whoa!" I darted my eyes around the room. Looking for it. Looking for blood. I was frantic. "It's just me. It's just me. No one is here. I've got you. You're safe." "No, we're not. It was just here, I heard." "We have multiple officers searching your home. No one is here." I scanned the room again. There was no camera, no creature, no obvious threat. The stress of what had just occurred began weighing down on me. I lost my sense of balance and stumbled. Officer Dan caught me by the arm. He guided me toward Max's bed. As I sat down, Max darted out from the closet and jumped onto the bed and clung onto me. "You called me, remember?" Officer Dan said. "But you didn't say anything, so we were afraid something had happened. We forced open the front door. Then I heard you guys in here. Did you think he broke in?" "I know he did. There were footsteps, And there's more pictures. Just look on the counter. There are no signs of forced entry, Jenny. Officer Dan paused and glanced over at the closet door. He ran his palms together, then approached the bed. He took a seat beside us. You know, sometimes, in high-stress situations, our minds produce things, sounds, images, things like that aren't really there. It's perfectly normal. Given your situation, it's possible that that's all that happened. Don't talk to me like that, Dan. Don't talk to me like I'm crazy. I know what I saw, I know what I heard. You're a cop, not a therapist. Get off the bed. Once I'd snapped on him, Officer Dan had no more psychotherapeutic explanations for me. He stood and left us alone in the room. He left the house, in fact, but some of the other officers were kind enough to stay with us until morning. For the rest of the night, there were no more signs of the intruder. The next day, I applied for a credit card and checked us into a hotel. I also put that house on the market. A week later, someone bought it. I took the money and bought a new house in a completely different state. Even though the old one sold well under its value, I didn't care. As long as we left behind whatever was in there, we had all we needed. At Max's new school, I met a group of mums that I became friends with, and that made a huge improvement on my quality of life. For the first time in a long time, I had people who cared about me. These ladies checked up on me, came over for wine night, got me out of my house. They even introduced me to a great guy who I'm still dating. Max made some new friends of his own, and he seemed happy at his new school. For a while, things were pretty great. This morning I put a note in Max's lunchbox, telling him how much I loved him. I know that is incredibly lame, but I couldn't help myself. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I always want him to know that. When he got home from school, he threw his lunchbox on the counter, ran up to me, and kissed me on the cheek. "I love you too, Mummy," he said. Then he went into his room to do his homework. My heart filled with joy. I was floating as I started to clean out his lunchbox. Then, for the first time in a long time, I actually cried. I cried because at that moment, I loved my life. I wished things would stay like that forever. I took the ice pack out of the lunchbox, then turned it upside down over the trash can. A few plastic baggies dropped into the trash, and then a piece of paper fluttered, out paper made of a different material than the one I'd written the note on. This one was glossy, small and square. It was a Polaroid. Violent images flooded my mind. The flash under the door, the camera click, demonic laughter. I leaned against the wall. I was having trouble breathing. Calm down, I told myself. Calm down, breathe, that's it. Maybe it was just something Max was working on in class. I fished the picture out of the trash. It was taken inside a classroom. Kids sat at their desks, talking amongst themselves. It was all normal enough, but then I noticed the angle at which the photo was taken. It was taken from the back of the classroom, shooting down at the kids' heads, almost like it was taken from the ceiling. Centered in the picture, held in sharp focus, was Max's smiling face. He was captured, mid-laugh. I screamed and dropped the picture. It spiraled to the ground and landed face down. There was a note scribbled on the back. Now, I don't know what to do. I thought it was the house. I thought that if we moved, we would leave that thing behind. But now I know it was all in vain, because it followed us. On the back, written in dark red ink, were the words, "I love you too, Jenny." Well, there you have it. 3 absolutely terrifying stories that I'm sure are going to haunt your dreams tonight. From demonic possessions and Ouija boards, to supernatural entities feeding on suicide, to stalkers that defy all logic and reason, these stories remind us that sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't explain. If you enjoyed these spine-chilling tales, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more terrifying content. Drop a comment below and let me know which story freaked you out the most, or if you have your own scary experiences you'd like to share. And remember, keep your lights on tonight. You never know what might be watching you from the shadows. Until next time, stay safe out there. Stay safe out